Last I checked, Spider-Man is the most popular superhero on the planet. That's right, I said it. Spider-Man is the most popular superhero on the planet. He's more popular than Batman. He's more popular than Superman. Look at any kid on the street. I promise you, I think in the last 2 days, I've seen at least 2 or 3 kids that have had either a Spider-Man cap or a Spider-Man bag or a Spider-Man accessory with them. These kids must be about 3 or 4. Dude is generational. So kids in 30, 40 years time will just gravitate towards this flipping character more so than the other ones. Spider-Man is a tier 1 big time character. So what I don't get, and again, I will try and keep this as non-spoilery as possible because I know it's just come out, so I will then do a spoiler review afterwards. But my main thing about it is, this is just what I don't get about the MCU here. That film I watched wasn't a Spider-Man film. That film I watched was somehow still a Tony Stark Iron Man film that just didn't have Iron Man in it. It was still pretty much an Iron Man film, but without Iron Man. Because, again, I don't want to give too much away. Almost everything within the film somehow revolved around Tony Stark. Almost everything somehow was in some way, whether directly or indirectly connected to Tony Stark and Iron Man. And I remember when I said in my preview that the one thing that I wanted in this film and the one thing that I thought was the biggest drawback of Homecoming was Spider-Man wasn't his own character. He was using Iron Man far too much as a crutch. And I think this is again evident in this film because, you see, it still has the same kind of comedic vibe as Homecoming. So there's that in there. Although I'll sort of get into my issues with that. But I think my biggest... Okay, look. Overall, what was my feeling after I left the film? Overall, I just felt... like there were really good bits in the film. There were really good bits, and there's definitely one bit in the film that is going to shock people. Hence why it is so good to go into the surprising, because there is something in here that will just shock people. But when you see it, you're like, whoa, wow, damn. So there's a nice little tidbit there. But I think the issues I have with this film is it's just it doesn't really feel like a strong enough story as a whole. And I think the key thing is it's really leads to Tony Stark. This film doesn't feel like it's an independent film in and of itself. I get the kind of story it's trying to tell. It's trying to tell a story of Spider-Man trying to find himself after the events of Endgame and trying to find out that he truly is a hero, even if he doesn't want to be based on just how he felt after what happened after Endgame. So I get that story that they're trying to tell. But this didn't feel like it was enough of a Spider-Man film. And that is why I think, this is why I believe that the issue of the MCU is coming through. Because again, look, it's like a yin and the yang. The beauty of what the MCU did was amazing. Look at all of these interconnecting stories. This film connects with this film connects with this film, this character, this film, and everything coalesces together. So as you're watching everything through, it's like if you're just watching like one really long TV series. That's cute, that's cool, but now it's becoming problematic then, because now what we're now having now is we're not watching films anymore. We're just watching episode 116. So you're like, okay, so what happened in episode 115? So you're just watching episodes, you're not watching films. And when I go to a cinema and I pay amount of cash, I want to see a film. I want to see a film it has a beginning, middle, and end and can stand on its own feet. Far From Home is an appendage to Endgame. It's an appendage to the Iron Man story. It's an appendage to the Tony Stark Peter Parker relationship, and I don't want that. Let's just be real here with you. I admire what Downey Jr. did for Iron Man. As I said again, look, Downey Jr. is an amazing, amazing actor, and I think he redefined the character because the character was relevant before, and he made the character relevant. So I'm thankful for that. But I don't care about Iron Man. I've never cared about Iron Man, and as well as Downey Jr. did, I appreciated the character a lot more. As I said, Captain America was like, based off the films, what Chris Evans did, Captain America was always my guy. That's why those are my three favorite films: First Avenger, Winter Soldier, and Civil War. For me, those are my personal favorite films. But I've always been a Spider-Man guy. I've always been a Spider-Man guy, and we are yet to see a truly great live-action Spider-Man film. We're truly yet to see the best reputation of Spider-Man is still that Fox cartoon. It's still the best. It's got everything right. So coming into this, it's like, I don't want to see references to Iron Man. I don't want to. We should have moved on from them. This is now should be about, okay, Iron Man is back there. This is now, see, this is what this film should have done. I thought that this film was where Spider-Man really comes into his element, and we get Spider-Man in his purest form. Because I get what they were doing to Homecoming. Exactly, we're trying to get an interesting into the character, and we're trying to differentiate this from Amazing Spider-Man and the Raimi movies. So I thought, okay, that's cool. So just for an introduction, let's use Iron Man as sort of a crutch, just to sort of give us an interesting new look at the Spider-Man character. But once you've now done that, it's now Far From Home, it's his post-Iron Man. This has to be purely Spider-Man, beginning, middle, and end fully. And watching this, I didn't get that. That they tried to make it much more of a Spider-Man film. They tried to show the evolution of the character, getting more confidence in who he is and his role within the superhero world. But it still felt as if it was relying too much on what Iron Man has done and everything. And my danger is that I just think that that's going to be the greatest tragedy of this iteration of Spider-Man, is that you've got the actor, you've got the right tone, you've got the right director, you've got so many elements right, that this Iron Man thing is just something that's just going to bring it all the way down. But even speaking about the tone and everything to this film, you see, Back to the Future. What I mentioned, Back to the Future. The reason why I mentioned Back to the Future is that movie is what that's the tone of Back to the Future is how the tone of the Spider-Man films would be. Back to the Future isn't a comedy. It's got comedic elements, but it's a nice balance of science fiction, drama, adventure, and some comedy in there. But it's primarily science fiction and adventure. That's this one I watched Far From Home. You might as well call it a comedy. Like, it might as well be a comedy. Like, it was like, look, this is a lot of comedy. And I think that's the thing with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a light-hearted character. But he's not, he doesn't exist in a comedic form. It's not Deadpool. Like, Back to the Future is a light-hearted film. It's very light-hearted. It's not a comedy. You can be light-hearted without being comedic. You know, there's just a boyish kind of tone to it. It's just not slapstick or comedy. So I just felt that the comedy thing here was a bit too much. But there were some very funny moments in this film. Trust me, like, especially with his friend and everything. There's just something that happened with his friend that I just found hilarious. So there are some very funny beats and funny moments in it. Just like there were funny moments in Homecoming, there are some very funny moments in this as well. Mysterio. Again, I can't say too much because I want to say more in spoiler. But I'll say this: Jake Gyllenhaal is a really good actor. I think he's because I remember first seeing him in Donnie Darko, which is one of a favorite film of mine, and he's grown so much and evolved so much as an actor. And right now he's in this pocket where he's really at his peak of his powers acting wise, and you could see hints of what could have been a very, very interesting performance. But this is where I felt the director dropped to the ball, because at the end of the day, the actors at the behest of the director. Jake Gyllenhaal's acting, I thought, was quality, and he's always quality. But the way he was directed and the way his character was presented, I think betrayed the kind of quality of actor that he is. Because again, if you're getting a dude who did Nightcrawler, who did Prisoners, who did Stronger, all of these very dark, dramatic films, you've got to try and bring that into this. And the thing about it is, I felt that Vulture and Michael Keaton's portrayal of Vulture and how that was portrayed was far more serious, far more menacing, far more sinister than this dude. You know, like this dude had hints of, this could be a very interesting villain. And then it just took a very weird turn that I was like, all that groundwork that you did just sort of has gone out the window. So, yeah, I mean, for me, because even for me, like, even by the time you got 3/4 of the film, I was like, okay, like, you've wasted a quality actor. You've wasted Gyllenhaal here, because you could have done something really interesting with him. And I just think that's how things were resolved. Very disappointing. I think the resolution of the film, the climax of the film, was very, very disappointing. Like, and see, that's the thing about this is that, because I've been looking at the reviews of it and people's views on this, you have to be objective. I'm a Spider-Man fan. And if I put on like my Spider-Man fan goggles, I'll just ignore the stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, well, it's Spider-Man. He's got another element. This wasn't Spider-Man. Like in Homecoming, what I liked about Homecoming was you really saw the Spider-Man character ooze through. So this is the confusing thing. In Homecoming, that was my main issue with Homecoming, is that this is too much about Iron Man and he's relying so much on Iron Man. But even if Iron Man was in the film and he was relying so much on Iron Man and his tech and everything, you still got much more of a Spider-Man character, and you really got much more of Tom Holland's take on the Spider-Man character in Homecoming. But in this Far From Home, where Iron Man isn't in it, you don't really get Spider-Man. I don't really get the Spider-Man character. I don't get the quips. I don't get the bravado. I don't get him mocking his villains. I don't get that. And for me, that is what made the Fox TV cartoon so great, and that's what makes the comics so great. It's his quips, it's his character, it's his personality as Spider-Man. We get who he is as Peter Parker. We get his social awkwardness as Peter Parker. But we need that juxtaposition of his confidence and that kind of snacky nature of him as Spider-Man, because that is a critical part of his character. Just as a critical part of Wolverine's character is him being shot, critical part of Spider-Man's character is his quips against his enemies, and that's what pisses him off. And we didn't get that in this movie. And I was like, bro, that's what Spider-Man's about. That's what we sign up for. We sign up for the quips. That's what we sign up for. So, because again, like for me, like one of my favorite scenes in Homecoming was when he stops those bank robbers that have the kind of Avengers mask, and just how he was giving them little one-liners and everything. I was like, oh my gosh, that is just quintessential Spider-Man. That is quintessential Spider-Man that we love. But in this is like, we didn't get that. We didn't get that in this thing. So, see, that's why I said Endgame was the Endgame. And even when I was watching the movie, and because whenever they do the whole intro thing, like the intro montage, and you see Captain America, I was like, yes, MCU's done. The MCU's done. This is DC's chance to take back the crown. And after watching this film and after Endgame, if DC don't take the crown now, then they're forever bricks. They're forever losers, because we're looking at this right now. See, this is now where MCU are now running into a big problem, because look, MCU can be saved if you let Spider-Man stand on his own 2 feet and allow them to completely unattach themselves from the shackles of the MCU tick list. Let Spider-Man just be fully 100% Spider-Man. But because you've committed to this whole MCU thing of everything interconnecting, you are now forever lodged to, okay, we could have mentioned Iron Man, we mentioned Tony Stark. Oh, Tony Stark, yeah. Yeah, man, Tony Stark, yeah, man, he meant so much to me. Yeah, Tony Stark was my guy, man. I'm like, come on, man. Really? Is that what is that how we're gonna roll? So Spider-Man right now and Peter Parker will forever now be lodged to Tony Stark for me. That's why I started this video by saying, do you know who Spider-Man is? This is the most, I'll say it again, and maybe you didn't hear me, I did not stutter. This is the most popular comic book character in the world, bar none. I will debate that with anyone. He is the most popular comic book character in the world. You don't need anybody to be a crutch to. So, I mean, so if I was to give this a mark, I would give this, I'll roll with an upper tier 3. I'll roll with an upper tier 3. It may change, but I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it's going to change. I think I'm pretty safe with an upper tier 3 for this, and I'm interested to see what others will say. Look, I said it, I'm a massive, huge fan of Jodie's Corner and the guys, so I definitely want to hear what they say. I'm interested to hear what guys like Collider, like Fandom, and all these other guys, say, because if you're being objective, there are a lot of issues with this. If you're a true Spider-Man fan, you have issues with this film. You have issues with this film. And that is, you know what the most annoying thing is this? As much as I hated those Raimi films, for me, it wasn't Spider-Man. The one thing those Raimi films had, those films stood by themselves. They were films. I didn't like the films, but at least they were films. This isn't a film. This is an episode. This is yet another episode in the MCU saga. And for me, I'm sorry, man. When I want to watch a TV episode, I click my mind. Okay, now I'm in TV mode. But when I'm going to a cinema, I'm paying money in a cinema, something that I take very seriously. I want to see a film. I want to see a story. I want to see a story that exists in and of itself. And with all of this MCU stuff, because trust me, I don't watch all the MCU films. That's why even when I was watching Infinity War, I was like, okay, wait, how did Doctor Strange get here and get this thing? Because I didn't watch Doctor Strange. So now we're now getting to a stage where we need to watch all the films and we need to see all of the special features to appreciate. Nah. You can't do that, man. Give me your film and let me appreciate your film in and of itself without the help of other films as well. Come on. So, yeah, man. Issues, man. I mean, I have issues with this big time, man. I have issues with this big time. I just think the thing about this is that there is a great core here. I think Tom Holland is great as Spider-Man. I think Zendaya is great as MJ. I think Tom Holland's friends and the character around them, I think is really good. And I think there is a great chemistry around the core of this. That if this film was just a standalone, cut a bit back on the comedy, get a bit more drama in there, and just make it about the Spider-Man character, focus it on that fully, you have a better product. The Iron Man Tony Stark thing is bringing this thing down. Okay? It's bringing this thing down. But I have to hammer that point home. MCU, I'll say it. MCU are disrespecting Spider-Man. That may sound strange because oh my gosh, look at what they're disrespecting Spider-Man. And I think it is ridiculous that in Far From Home, post Iron Man, this dude is still somehow the master to Spider-Man. Spider-Man is still the flipping yatch to Iron Man. So And no. I can't walk like that. I can't walk like that, you know. Spider-Man is too iconic of a character to be at the behest of any other character, let alone flipping Iron Man. That's the okay. If he was at the behest of, let's say, do you know what's funny? Because if we now want to bring in DC, then okay, so in Marvel, there's no character greater than Spider-Man. That's the crazy thing. Within Marvel, there is no character greater than Spider-Man. Spider-Man is the number one character in Marvel. He's Marvel's face. But I get it. So the issue that we have now is, based on the failure of Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the success of Iron Man, how Iron Man was the first film, it led the MCU and everything, the dynamics have changed. So the dynamics in this MCU world is Iron Man is King Daddy, he's King Dog. Spider-Man, you came in under him and you will forever be under him. So that's cool, but this is why it comes to this. I got that for Homecoming. That made all the sense in the world to try and relaunch this character. Okay, bring him in with Iron Man. Far From Home, bro, let him stand on his 2 feet, man. Let him stand on his 2 feet and let this thing fully exist without even any mention of Tony Stark. Mention him once, twice. But afterwards, it's a full-on Spider-Man film where we now see Spider-Man fully in it. We did not see Spider-Man fully in his elements here. They tried to do it, but it was cheap and half-hearted. Like the thing that's been so annoying is because you've got something really good here. You've got something really good here with the cast and the people in the roles and what they're doing within the roles. There's something really good here, but just not fully delivering based on this MCU flipping encroachment. But look, man, I'll discuss more on it once in spoilers, so I can really get into details on spoilers, because I need to get into how Mysterio is portrayed and a bit more of the details of the holes of how Spider-Man is portrayed in this. So yeah, man. But look, man, I will discuss more. So follow me on Twitch, where I will obviously do a live discussion about this on my Twitch page and everything. And yeah, Spider-Man is bigger than Iron Man and Tony Stark. Sorry, I don't care how successful he's been in the MCU. Iron Man, Spider-Man, it will always be bigger and greater than Iron Man.